Hey friends, you're watching BrainStormAcres. I'm Henry. Today I'm going to talk about water. Water, you say? Well, yeah, water. It's kind of something that we take for granted these days in most modern American cities and much of Europe. There are parts of the world where clean water is really difficult to come by. We use a big Berkey water filter in our kitchen. The reason for it's really simple. Because we live on water haul, that is, we have to have our water brought to us in a big truck. Sometimes we're not positive that that truck is as clean as we'd like it, so we use the water filter. Let's talk a little bit about water filters and how they started and how they came about and why they're used today. Using sand, gravel, charcoal, wood ash were all things that were done hundreds of years ago. The objective was to make sour water in some parts of England sweet. Sour water has a low pH. Sweet water has a higher pH. You don't want the pH to go too high, but you don't want it to be something that's, say, 5 or 4.5, which you can have in some surface water. Well, what did they do? There's an old manuscript from several hundred years ago in which the author describes making a water softening system. It made the water sweet. There was a bog of water and he placed a barrier of gravel. And then he put wood ash, and he put some sand, and then he put charcoal, and he put some more sand. And he described that by taking the water on the output side of that bed of stuff, you could have sweet water instead of sour water. That approach didn't really start coming into common practice until the 1800s, when sand was used to start filtering water to get some of the big chunks out. It works very well. But you know, it doesn't get rid of bacteria and things that might make you sick. So today we use other kinds of water purification systems. The Berkey filter uses activated charcoal compressed in an open cylinder like this. This is just a water bottle I'm using for explanation purposes, but the same idea works for the Berkey black filters. They're made with activated charcoal. Now they have something else about them that's special, and that is there are special kinds of beads that can be put into a water filtration system to take out some heavy metals and things like that. Well, what do I mean by beads? They're a special chemical composition that will suck some kinds of metals and things like that out of the water. I had a question several months ago about could one of our viewers use a different water filter? And the answer is sure, you can. What I know about the Berkey is that it has a certain kind of behavior. Now many other filters can also have that same kind of behavior. And all the way it works. This activated charcoal canister is hollow on the inside, just like this water bottle. The structure of the activated charcoal that makes up the thickness of the wall of the chamber traps various particles. Now, if you start reading all these kinds of specifications, you'll find out there's a thing called a pore size, and that's really the size of a hole, let's just call it that, the size of a hole, that has a path through the filter. Well, a lot of people get concerned about the Berkey because it has a pore size of 0.9 microns. That's pretty darn small, but it's not small enough, in theory, to stop some kinds of biological contamination? Well, the answer to that is it's really not the pore size that matters. You can find some filters that have a smaller pore size, let's say 0.2 microns. That seems about 5 times better than 0.9 microns. Well, not necessarily. It all depends on the channel that goes through that activated charcoal. When the activated charcoal is pressed together to form this kind of a cylinder, it has channels that go through it. And the trick is, what you want is you want the water to pass through as many of those pieces of activated charcoal as possible. That's what captures the contaminants in your water. It's really that simple. Now, if you look at some water purification systems, they'll tell you all about the NSF certification. Berkey doesn't have an NSF certification. The reason is really pretty simple. In order to actually perform an NSF compliant test, you have to run 6,000 gallons of water through the filter before you do the test. Now, the Berkey filters are only guaranteed to filter about 3,000 gallons, and we're going to replace ours before we get close to 3,000 gallons. What's the difference between the black Berkey filter and other black water filters that look exactly the same? Well, it's hard to tell. I don't happen to have the scientific apparatus to evaluate the pore structure of all those different kinds of charcoal filters. But I can tell you that the test results from the Berkey make me perfectly confident. Now, some of these others will be perfectly fine, and if you're not trying to filter out virus or necessarily all the bacteria, they'll be fine too. They may even be fine filtering out bacteria, really, really small biological things. Now, what kind of scientific apparatus does it take to really test these kinds of filters? Well, first you want to be able to look at the really, really microscopic structure of the filters in order to analyze what the longest path is for the water to get through the wall of those filters. That's an expensive piece of equipment. I don't have it, and as far as I know, no one's really doing that kind of evaluation. Now, Berkey has done lab tests from independent labs, but they're not going with the NSF. That's the National Sanitary Foundation specification for performing these tests. It's called NSF 53. If you care, you can look it up. But it's important to know that Berkey doesn't do that. Now, some systems do it. You can get, for example, the Brita water pitcher that does carry an NSF certification. But you have to look to see exactly what they're filtering out. Now, there's some other kinds of water filtration that do work very well. Activated charcoal is pretty much a common ingredient across all of them. Some of them have other kinds of filter media, like wound filter that looks like yarn on a spool. That's to capture the large chunks. It also captures things like iron oxide, rust. Some systems include what's called an anion exchange membrane. And that's just a fancy way of saying they have some chemical particles, those beads I was talking about before, that are in a separate canister. Those work by exchanging some of the particles that are in the filter for the ones coming in. A lot of times it's potassium, sometimes it's sodium, but it's to replace those heavy metal ions that are coming in, those heavy medical particles. Well, what else can you do to have safe water? Well, one thing you can do is you can boil your water. If you're concerned about metal or other contaminations, you can distill your water. Those are all techniques that will work. It's a pain in the neck to do it, but you can do it. Now, I'm perfectly happy with the drinking water we get out of the Berkey. I'm also very happy with the drinking water quality that comes out of the Brita pitcher, the Pure pitcher, and a bunch of other products. But the nice thing about the Berkey is we end up with 3.5 gallons of water in the bottom of that big container that I can use for cooking and doing other things like that. A few of you have asked about how we're doing. Well, we're doing fine. I don't have any strains or pains or anything else like that from the accident on Friday night. Irene's thumb is doing better. It's not perfect, but it's getting there. I don't know what the story is on the car yet. It's going to be at least another week before I hear back. But as I said in the last show, I'm expecting it to be totaled. If it isn't, that might be good. It might be bad. It all depends on what damage was done to the car. Well, I hope you found this talk about water filtration, water purification to be of interest. It's been a long time coming to tell our viewers our opinion of the Berkey black filters versus other black filters. There's other filters you can get. There are some that are ceramic. They look like something that would come out of your china closet. They're generally speaking a white ceramic material. They have very fine pores that takes a long time to filter through. You have to replace them more frequently than you do these activated charcoal filters. You can scrub them and do other things like that to extend the life. What choice you make is up to you. You can make any choice you want. You just want to make sure that you're trying to understand what you need to filter out of your water. In our case, this is belt and suspenders for us to make sure that in case we get a contaminated load of water, we have a way of filtering those contaminants out. It's going to be probably bacteria. So we just want to make sure that goes out. Thanks very much for watching. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell for notifications because we have a lot more going on. In fact, speaking of water, it's been hailing this afternoon. You might have heard it in the background. We've definitely caught more water in our water catchment tank, so we'll be able to continue watering the greenhouse from that rainwater. Thanks for watching. We'll talk with you later. Bye. And don't forget to brainstorm. We do.